morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you might be. We're back with a special Muscle Beach episode of 425 Show today with our two diesel friends, Christos and Dan Pop. Good morning, fellas. How are you?
Wonder Twins, we meet again. We meet again.
I couldn't resist. Sorry, it was too good. I couldn't pass it up.
Why am I hearing the Mario music in my headphones? Can we get some audio budget here, fellas? I mean, come on, lights, music. Let's get some sass here, fellas.
People love our music, my friend.
Yeah. Sadly, this isn't the good music because the good music we can't upload here. So, talk about production budgets. It's either kind of not that great background music, or your PC dies when you connect to OBS Ninja, and we do it through OBS. So
yes,
we figured that probably wouldn't go so well. So.
I'm just happy to be here with you all. It's good.
Same here, man. It's been a while, right? We did the podcast back in October or something. Which was
just was waiting for the right moment to unleash the Wonder Twins on the cloud native world. So.
We don't talk much about Kubernetes here, so this will be really good today, I think.
Is there a world outside of Kubernetes, everyone? Y'all, is there? I mean, there is. Obviously, there's many beautiful cloud native projects, and there's many beautiful things out there for DevOps. So I'm sure we'll cover them all in this hour, right?
Well, it's probably our lack of understanding. Like I never really touched Kubernetes in a production environment because as I joined Microsoft, Kubernetes started picking up very, very heavily in 2016, 17. And unless you act like I don't feel confident because I haven't done big projects where I, dig deep into the Kubernetes world and see all the gotchas and have the failures and you learn from it. So I don't speak about it because I don't have the knowledge. And it's very different having the academic knowledge of, hey, I know what Kubernetes is, and I've done a few tutorials, and I had fun playing around and setting up my Kubernetes to actually run a production system on Kubernetes and having the battle scars to talk about it. That's why we bring the experts like you.
I'll tell you this. I mean, I started from the the legacy world as well. I mean, and I was a director of IT for an investment software company, and it was servers, server client, Microsoft. Hey, I'm an MCSC, y'all. Come on, I got cred, baby.
There you go.
So, and then you move into things like the cloud, right, and Azure and AWS and those type of things. And we worked with. I worked at HPE, so I worked on OpenStack, so it was infrastructure as code and all of that. And then once I saw containers, I was hooked. I was like, this is kind of where I fell in love, without a doubt, right? So yeah. Now I'm here.
All right, so let me ask you that. Let me ask you. At what point? I'll back up. Do you think people are going to run their own container orchestrators forever?
Look, I mean, that's it's a loaded question. And I always say this, and this is my classic line. It's literally in every podcast I've ever had was there's a task for every tool and there's a tool for every task. If you don't want to have to build a platform if the one's out there already for you. You can run OpenShift on Azure. You can run AKS. You can run any of these things. You can manage this on your own deployments using kubeadmin to do those types of things to me, or you can even go serverless if you need to. Mm-hmm. The question becomes, what is it you are trying to accomplish? And if you don't need Kubernetes, you don't need Kubernetes. And I'm here to tell you, but what you will need, regardless of all that, is runtime security. There's a segue, fellas.
Oh, look at that! Almost like you planned it. Amazing. Yes, security.
Up with the Wonder Twins, y'all. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, man.
It's like we had talked before. Who could have guessed?
Before we jump in,
I think that's the thing.
We have news, right?
Yeah, we do have a few bits of news. I love that. It's just fantastic. Anyway,
professional work,
Yeah, that's right. See, we blew all the budget on a 4-second video.
We don't have anything for music, so you are stuck with
music. And good morning to everybody who's watching. Hey, Bolt. Yes. Bolt says that in his company he's usually the tool, which I can totally relate to that. So I know that feeling. WWDC was yesterday, so I turned my iPad on for the first time since last year's WWDC.
Installed everything.
Well, but the problem is on my iPhone, Outlook doesn't work. Like if I open it, if I try to open Outlook, it says Outlook needs to be updated. So I can't open Outlook.
Can you remove and reinstall?
No, I tried that. It doesn't work. So, but it's cool because that's not my main phone anyway. So I'm not too worried about it. But the thing I noticed, so Apple mentioned they're doing the mail pixel blocking thing, right?
Yes.
So they're the magic pixels that people stuff in emails, they're gonna start blocking them, which was the same thing that the Hey email service did before their whole company had their little implosion a couple weeks ago, where everybody said stupid things on Twitter. And but it's interesting because now that Apple's doing it, they said they've had 96% opt-in to people blocking tracking in like the new thing that came out in iOS 14 or whatever about don't ask these apps not to share, don't let these apps track back and forth.
Yes.
96% adoption according to Apple, which is
amazing.
Insane.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So people apparently care about privacy when you give them an option.
Imagine that. I mean,
oh god,
I still use a Google phone, but at the same time, it's like I don't really know what my options are. I don't really like the iPhone thing. Not anymore.
What are you done? Are you an Android or an Apple fanboy?
I'm an iPhone. I have an iPhone.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
And you have a Mac as well, right?
I have a StarTech as well. I just use that as Motorola. Hey, I'm old, y'all.
Bring back WebOS and Windows Phone. Oh man, you know what?
My first cell phone took AA batteries.
Oh snap! Really?
It was so my dad owned a cell phone store for a while, and I was 14, which would have been 99, and he brought home this thing. And it was a bar phone. It was like a Motorola bar phone. It was way later than StarTAC. It wasn't that big. It was way past the StarTAC days. And you could either buy this $80 battery pack that you slapped in the back that was basically 4 rechargeable AA's in a really expensive plastic case, or you could just put AA's in it.
That's amazing.
And I tell you, it was the strangest thing because your battery starts to go low and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going through 4 batteries a day. This is more expensive. I should just buy the $80 thing. So I think that was that was probably close to my first cell phone. And then I ended up with a Nokia, what was it, the 5910 or whatever with the R, you get different face plates. Those things were, I loved those things. So,
early days of mobile phones, right? Our kids will never know the struggle.
Yeah. Greetings, Godek. Good afternoon to Germany and Fuel with the rechargeable batteries. Yeah.
Exegate. Somebody's saying Windows CE. Somebody's saying TOS. What is TOS? Is it
TOS?
TOS. Yeah. Fuel Snubble. You need to unravel the acronym there so we can get the reference. But man,
what on earth is TOS?
Oh, Atari ST operating system.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was way before me.
Damn, that was before my time. And I'm old. So,
what was your first phone, Dan? Was it a StarTAC?
Yeah, what was your first one?
I think it was a Nextel. I'm pretty sure of it. Yeah. So, and it was the one it was the on-call thing. It was because obviously being a director of IT, you were on call for any type of outages and all that fun stuff.
Yes.
And then I moved into a sales role, and so I had to turn off the phone for the first time and not keep it near my bed. It was the most oddest feeling. It was just crazy. Yeah.
Nextel, man, I remember those. When I was in high school, the Nextel was really popular. In fact, I remember. I don't know if you guys remember because I don't know how old you are, Dan. But when I was in high school, the brightly colored.
I'm 22. Just turned 23.
23. He's just getting
okay, so 20th anniversary of 23, I guess. But so when I was in high school, they had these brightly colored NASCAR team jackets. They were huge and they were wool and they were and I live in North Carolina, so it's hot most of the year. And these kids would come to school with these jackets on, and
You wanted one.
I remember a guy had a Nextel jacket because it was bright ass yellow. I mean, like full blown, full send yellow, and you couldn't miss him. Like you weren't very stealth in that thing because it was like it was like a giant Skittle walking through the hallway.
Right. Enough with the memory lane. Anything else from the Apple announcement yesterday, other than the fact that everyone was disappointed that they didn't announce new hardware? Like all the news stores, like there's gonna be a new Apple MacBook coming, and there's going to be a new phone coming, or not phone, but they were definitely talking about new series of MacBooks, which didn't land. So
all I saw was that my MacBook Pro has fallen off of the upgrade list.
Oh, you know what? I put a comment on Twitter, and I shouldn't have done that because I woke up on 30 responses about people slagging Microsoft about Windows not being supported, and then saying that Apple is much better in supporting all their hardware. I was like, maybe I shouldn't put that in.
I can't. I don't understand that. I can run Windows 10 on like a 15-year-old laptop, like not well, right? But still loads. Yeah, that's a little weird.
Not to mention that we loaded Fox Pro, right? Do we not load Fox Pro on a Windows server?
That's right.
Was it? Or Windows 10
we
from
ran
20 years ago?
We ran it on my machine like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like a month ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I tried to do that with Mac OS and tell me where that takes
Give me a break. I can't even get the proper resolution on my laptop without installing some third-party kernel hack. Come on.
So I don't like it when mommy and daddy fight. I love you both, right? So can we stop this? Like, can we stop this? That's number one. Number two, Bolt just mentioned something. Sorry to bogart your show, you all, but like, talk about the internet terminating for 2 hours today. That's big news, you all.
That was big. That was pretty big.
Because you know what? For the first time in our history, everyone, it wasn't DNS. It wasn't DNS.
Well, that's what the comment about it wasn't DNS. What was it? And I missed it.
It was Fastly.
Fastly CDN. Yeah.
Damn. And I missed all that. I was asleep when it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was the thing about like Stack Overflow was 503, and everybody was like, well, I guess we can go home for the day. No code will be written as long as it's 503.
But it was everything. Git was down. Twitter was up. So everybody was shit posting. Posting, excuse me. I'm sorry on this. So, yeah.
That's more appropriate. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, it's okay. So
yeah, okay. Let's do some fun stuff because no more fighting. I mean, it wasn't fighting. It's like friendly conversation. Me and JP always do that.
I mean, that just seemed like friendly conversation to me. So we're gonna talk about containers and Kubernetes and all sorts of stuff. So let me get the right video loaded here.
Legacy.
Oh wait, sorry, that wasn't
the right video. That was not the right video.
Was it? That wasn't the right one.
Was it intentional? Kubernetes is definitely not legacy.
Totally unintentional. I don't know what happened. The thumbnails are just so small. You know, what could I do? Anyway, so Dan, tell us about. Well, first, tell us what you do because not everybody knows, and you've got Falco in your corner. But I don't think we all know what that is.
Well, I'm going to explain it to you. That's good. So my name is Dan Papandrea. People call me Pop. I'm the director of open source ecosystem and community for a company called Sysdig, which is a secure DevOps platform. And we're in the Azure marketplace if you all want to take a look. But basically it's, a security tool, but it's based off this open source beginning. So we have a foundation open source of something called Falco. And I'm going to kind of explain to you all what this is. Do you mind if I share my screen, y'all?
No, not at all. Please.
Wonderful. Okay, so let me go ahead and present here. So I'm going to try to do this in like a couple slides, y'all. So here we're going to do this here. So I'm going to give you kind of an overall kind of thing of what runtime security is, right? And so why do you need runtime security? If you're looking to detect a malicious behavior like drift or present at runtime or unknown zero-day threats or like incident response where you're alerting on detection as they happen. So if you're deploying something in Kubernetes or on a legacy host or even in serverless functions and all of those type of things, you kind of want to understand what's running. If you think of attacks that happened last year, and you look at the market, there's basically $5 trillion worth of misconfiguration and security issues.
5 trillion?
Trillion. This is from Technorati, you all. Google it. Or excuse me, Bing it. Thank you. So
It's okay. We Google things.
Google it with Bing. How about that? And then don't forget it.
all right. So DuckDuckGo. Anyway, so basically what you want to do is like you want to kind of understand what's running in your containers and all those types of things. So those are things to get hacked. So you kind of want to look at it from a forensics perspective and also be compliant with these things you hear like PCI or NIST standards or SOC compliance and those types of things, right? And so Falco is this open source runtime security engine. Okay. And basically I'll tell you, again, what this is security engine gives you observability at the kernel level. So if you're running everything, the underlying piece to any type of infrastructure, be it on the cloud, be it on-prem, be it anywhere, is something called the kernel. And you've probably heard of something eBPF recently with Windows supporting with eBPF, which is awesome. It means enhanced Berkeley packet filtering functionality. And what that does, it lets you tap into the kernel versus having to go in and do direct injection into the kernel for code purposes, which is literally like a mailing list right now, right? So it's basically like almost a peephole into the kernel to do a lot of cool application functionalities. You can do observability with it. You can do security with it. In fact, if you're familiar with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, we're an incubated project over there. The things like Kubernetes, right? Prometheus, all those things are graduated projects that are part of it. We actually donated or contributed these driver sets. They're called or libs that we donated that allow people to tap into these kernel level functions from an eBPF and KMod perspective. And so when you have this thing and you've installed this, which we can install as a Helm chart, you can install as a default like binary that's running on the hosts that are running here. You can tap into serverless functions as well. But basically, you get a default set of rules. These are 120 out of the box rules that you get with Falco. This is again through years of contribution through the community, doing things like, I want to understand if somebody, if tapping into Kubernetes or tapping into the underlying, host, like, hey, I'm writing to the Etsy bin directory, or I'm dropping a payload and I'm going out to a network I shouldn't be going to, you're going to get notified. And that output could be sent to something like syslog, file, standard out, shell, HTTPS, or gRPC, or are you seeing that output to Prometheus? That's another thing you can output to. Or if you use something like Falco Sidekick, which is a daemon that runs as well, and it's all part of the standard deployment, right? It connects to the ecosystem. So if you see here, if you want to like output to chat like Discord or Slack, hey, this, if I have a DevOps team that I want to kind of say this incident happened at a runtime perspective, then I want to send to logs. Or if I want to send to Azure Grid, I can do that as well, right? Because it's all JSON, right? It's all like output that I can send out. Or you can have FASDO functions. We just did, the community actually contributed 6 blogs to this. I'm really happy about it. It's a response engine. So basically that alert pops up and then I can have it do any function I want. I can have it kill the container. I can have it do a mem dump. The universe is open. You write, like a Go app, or you write anything that's going to respond to this. There's one that this person wrote that I thought was really awesome. They wrote it so if a rule was triggered, which I'm going to show you all in a second, he basically had it go do a network Kubernetes network policy change to basically not allow the egress out at a given period.
Nice isolation, automatic isolation, right?
And think about it this way. Let's say we get an alert that somebody tried to look into Etsy Shadow, which we're going to do an example of later. What if, and these Wonder Twins, the identity Wonder Twins that are here, what if we have somebody looking at that and we don't want them to do so? Maybe we can have it go in and revoke that person, like do an Azure function or something like that, right? That's the world that's open to everybody. And that's why I'm so pleased, because we integrated with CI/CD things for this response engine, like Argo CD, if you all are familiar. Tecton, OpenFaz, Knative, all of these functions that are in the multiverse. And that's what I love about it, is because people are contributing this. This wasn't like, the maintainers of Falco. This was literally the community just going to contribute to this.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Extensible model. Like it.
Exactly. So, okay. So in terms of, I said it was 7 slides, but I'm going to add 2 here. So basically, like, again, this is where like that underlying piece here, they're all built on runtime scanning's built in Falco. This is our, the Systics commercial tool, which basically allows you, and this is also free, free for you. You can get cloud forensics and cloud log detection all based on this. So, and this is all in the Azure marketplace. I won't sell it. You all can just go here to systig.com/community, start free.
So well, while you're here, just a quick question. So runtime security, as opposed to, I mean, this isn't. Is this a new like sort of concept? Is it that this is really deep into containers and the runtimes and Kubernetes to give you more visibility? Like, what's the
if you think about this from a pipeline perspective, there's the build, there's the run, and then there's the postmortem, right? This is what you do, right? You're doing your builds, you're using our CI/CD process, and you're probably doing vulnerability scanning there. You're using Azure Functions Juice, and when you're running it, you probably want to have a set of rules that are saying this should happen and this shouldn't happen, those type of things. You've heard of things like OPA, right? If you're OPA, that's more for like, policy management on pods and the policies, like very much like SecComp or something like this, right? But what if something's running, you want to look at it from a behavioral perspective and say, okay, well, Christos went ahead and went into this pod and this thing happened. And you want to get that, that forensics kind of capability. So I'm going to actually show this, all right?
Yes.
So fellas, here's what I did, right? I went ahead, let me just go ahead and do this. I have the famous Wonder Twins cookies. I stole this from you all, right? And I have this deployed in the environment, right? These are your famous cookies that we've deployed. Now, if we look here, I'll show you. I have an Azure Kubernetes deployment here. And let me go ahead and make this bigger. And let me go ahead and get pods, and you'll see that I have this Nginx deployment here, right? And if I do get service, it'll show that's there, right? So this is shared on an external port or whatever. Now, I kind of want to look at this and go, okay, well, I want to, I've deployed Falco in this environment as well. Let me go ahead and show that. Get pods -n Falco. Right, and you'll see I have Falco running on each of the nodes, right? The 3 nodes, and it's also running Sidekick, and it's running the UI, which I'm going to demonstrate to you in a second. And this was all one Helm chart that we deployed, right? Nice. This is showing you here, which I don't want to show for long because I have my subscription there, and everybody's taking spin out a bunch of instances. So, but you can see here, like I actually integrated it and had with Sidekick, I told you about those integrations. I put in what the subscription was for my Azure grid and all of those things. And JP, I think later we're going to show the integration from your side as well. So from that perspective, right, I have this thing here that I've deployed, that Nginx deployment, but you can see here's my Wonder Twins deployment here, right?
Yep.
And you can see that I've written, this mount path of user share Nginx HTML. Well, I want to protect against this, right? So I have those default set of rules like dev and instance, so those type of things, but maybe you want to create a custom rule. And this is the beauty of it. I can go ahead and contribute this back. So here's my custom rule.
I have a quick question. Is that how lightweight is Falco? Like if I add it to my pod, is it going to add any overhead to the container engine and all that?
I get that literally every single demo, and I can tell you it's from zero. It depends on what's running in the environment in terms of syscalls, because we're tapping into syscalls from that perspective, right? But I've seen, like I said, from minimal to 0.2% of a total CPU to 2% of CPU, and this was running 70,000, disk write raw and all those types of things, right?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So this is the anatomy of a rule. It's a YAML. This is all YAML that we've deployed here. So this is a rule set this is calling my 425 rule set, right? It's if I was tampering with that user Nginx directory, this is the description. It's going this condition. It's saying if somebody touches that user share Nginx, send this output, right? Okay. And so then I can prioritize it, emergency or whatever, and tag it and all of that fun stuff, right? All right. Nice. So here's the deal. We're going to try to exec into that pod. Nginx -bash, right? And we've done that. Now let me show you all this. Back to you can see right here. Let me just go ahead and do this. Come on, there we go. You can see it showed me that I terminaled into that pod here.
Oh, nice.
You see, right, immediate there, right? You saw how immediate that was?
Yeah.
So we go in here. Let me just make it a little larger. You can see this is showing me the metadata that this thing happened, right? It's showing me that the shell was spawned. It's showing me that bash was run, right? And it's showing me which container this was running on, which image registry, and those types of things, right? Now, but let's go deeper here, right? Oops. And we'll go for the last 15 minutes. So let's go back in here. and we're going to go. Remember, there's that user share Nginx.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and trigger that to run. So we're going to go to user share Nginx.
HTML.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And I'm going to try to move it right to index-hacker.html.
So is that
of course,
about
go ahead.
configuration drift? Is that what you're displaying now?
This is also a runtime perspective. You think about what happened last year with like SolarWinds as an example. What did they do? They came in, they put it, they had that payload that they had.
Yes.
And it was running anomalous behavior. It was going out, touching a directory, curling to go grab something, and then it went to an external network and brought that thing in, and then it did this thing. This is what I'm showing you here, right?
Right.
Look how instantaneous this is. So go back here, and I go, boom. Yep, you see my 425. Oh, there we go. 425 tampering has been initiated here.
Uh-huh.
You see that?
Yes.
Let me just see if I can make it larger. Why isn't that working? But this is showing us it's showing the emergency tampering one. It's to protect them. It's showing us which container this happened on, which tag. So think about this. If I have a cluster, an AKS cluster, multiple places and all this, and I need to find that needle in the haystack where somebody went, look how quick I'm getting that response. And by the way, you see that UI? That happened in the last 6 months. You know why? A contributor from the adopted that actually created that.
Nice.
That's the beauty of community and open source, y'all.
So we have a question from Exegate. He said, who can execute into the pod? Like, do they need to have elevated permissions to do that?
So it's a good question. Again, it's something where if you've defined like RBAC rules and all those things, if we think about those, the common things we have, like those are things that you'd have to define when you're deploying your cluster and all of those things using like Azure, AD and all of those fun things, right?
Yep.
So in this case, right, I'm kind of the root, right? And it's also showing us which user. You see user 0 here. It's showing which user. If I had like, some type of RBAC where I'm going in as Christos and I don't have that capability and you want to look at that, that's where like you have this audit capability.
Ooh, I have 2 questions now. One is, will it show in the log? And I think you just said that it shows in the log, which is great.
Yes.
And the other one is, does it have Azure Arc support? I don't know if you followed the news from Build where Azure Arc now allows you to run PaaS services on any environment. I think it's built on top of Kubernetes. So will there be support or integration with Falco, you think?
So the beauty of this is, right, it runs on, I'm assuming that it's running on Arc is using an underlying Linux of some sort. Like I think there's the Microsoft Debian that you all have or whatever the implementation of the underlying nodes is running. Do you all know that? Because if it is, it's supported, we would probably do the builds for that. That shouldn't be an issue.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Arc is, as I understand it, essentially just a set of sidecars that run. So I don't think, in terms of like an integration with Arc, we're going to look at monitoring and how to get these logs into Azure here in a few minutes. But I mean, this runs anywhere. This doesn't matter, right? Like any Kubernetes cluster can run this. No sweat.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be in a cloud. It could be local. It could be wherever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So the other thing is, and this is where I segue over to JP. Now, I wasn't able to integrate this for my demo, but JP did on his side. But you see, like basically for Falco Sidekick, we have that standard out. You see, I can output this. All I did was when I ran the Helm chart, I said, there's where Event Help is, or Web UI and those types of things. And that's what it's showing me, right? So these alerts that happened within the container. But I want to show you all again, like literally, there's already these things out of box, but all I had to do is do a Helm upgrade to be able to put in new custom rules that are here. So think about this, the reaction of this or a CI/CD process, like rules as code, where, I've deployed X deployment 1.0 and of rules, and this thing comes on like a SolarWinds level thing, like at a runtime, I want to protect the environment. Well, if somebody had a rule out there, I can go ahead and do, go to like Secure Hub, Security Hub right here, this is another thing that's part of it. I can go grab a rule for Nginx, for instance, or etcd or PHP and all of these things. Things, right?
Nice.
So here's the, that can go Helm upgrade and add these rules here, but here's the actual, remember I showed you the rule description and priority, right? I can do that and add even more. So I have those 120, but if there's anything that's specific to Nginx that I want to protect myself, I can take these rules. Now, if you're looking at our commercial, the Sysdig product, it's already integrated all of those already. So it's basically like you have a choice of, that this or others. So yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing.
So how do those rules get evaluated? Like, what sort of things are in scope, I guess, for being able to evaluate, or what kind of things can I evaluate in a rule, I guess?
It's a good call. So anything that's a system call. So you saw that I had so anything that is like an exec is a system call, right? Anything that from an eBPF or KMod perspective. So file rates is a system call, right? Network is a system call. Binary behavior is a system call, right? So those can be created. But you saw that YAML. It was like event.arg/file descriptor, right? I can go file descriptor dot / user share nginx, and that could be the place for my sensitive directory that's looking there.
Yeah.
But then again, and I can update, and all those rules deploy down. All I have to do is restart the pods, and they would get the rule sets. On the commercial tool, it's automatic. It automatically gets the rules and deploys them. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Right.
So, years ago, I had a friend who worked at a place. They were building essentially a hypervisor that would it was run on an individual node, and it would monitor syscalls and do heuristics, essentially. So trying to figure out if this was malicious long before anybody actually knew it was malicious. And I mean, in a lot of ways, this sounds it's really quite similar, but instead of it being hypervisor level, it's at the Kubernetes orchestrator level, right?
If you all are familiar with Wireshark, our founder is one of the co-creators of it, Loris Dejiani. And he created that. So in terms of this level of scoping at the eBPF or kernel level and system call level, we've been doing this for like over 12 years. Sysdig's been in existence for the last, I think, 6, right? So, we're kind of the experts when it comes to this. But one of the things I really want to impart to you all is people think, oh, if I do vulnerability scanning and, I'm covered. No. To me, it's you need vulnerability scanning, you need CIS benchmarks, you need runtime security, which I mentioned before in terms of drift. When something is running in prod, then you need to investigate and have a postmortem forensics capability. Also, the most important thing is auth. The auth is the most important thing because the identity twins are all about that.
Well, security is layers, man. You can't say, I put a firewall in the front and then I don't have to worry about that. It goes from threat modeling all the way down to your CI/CD, your tools, your software development lifecycle, and everything else. So you can't have the one tool that rules them all, and it needs to be in layers. That's why you need a lot of different capabilities there, and that's why cloud is so messed up, because in the past you were running on your own network and everything was secure and nice because you knew that it wasn't secure and nice, but it was easier to secure the perimeter. Now there's no moat. The cloud is everywhere, and everyone can come from all these different places.
One of the questions you asked earlier was about Kubernetes. Should I have it managed or like do it myself, right? And to me, it's like you're managing a platform. I think a lot of the cloud providers like Azure, those type of things, they provide a really good set of basic tools for like vulnerability management, aspects of runtime and capabilities like for the integrations with open other things. But I believe that true runtime capability and forensic capability, as I showed you here, we're the best in class. We're the best at what we do from a runtime perspective, and it's not just me talking. It's literally we've been Docker pulls over 27 million Docker pulls since November of last year.
So Sysdig is a broader suite than just Falco. Like Falco is a component in the sort of the Sysdig suite, right?
Correct. So Sysdig incorporates open source we're built on an open source capability foundation. So if you think about our roots with Wireshark, and also what we did, system call perspective. If you look at it, we just combine that whole platform, that whole from dev, from build all the way to postmortem. So you get cloud security, you get image scanning, you get network segmentation, you get threat detection and response, you get monitoring and troubleshooting, you get postmortem compliance and all of those types of things. So Falco specifically is handling the runtime. It's the underlying engine that handles the runtime capability. And also, remember I told you about those libs that we use that has that introspection and all of that. That's all, is the core of what we build and what we call our secure DevOps platform.
Okay, cool. So if I'm using like a SIEM today, would would I feed my SIM data into Sysdig? Would Sysdig feed its data into my SIM tool? Would this replace my SIM tool? Like,
No,
how
it's
does it
we're
play?
we're the signal provider, right? And then we
Okay.
can have that be event forwarding to things like Sentinel or like other things that are out there, like Kafka streams and those types of things, right? So just think of us as we're kind of grabbing that data as a signal provider. We're also enhancing it with the metadata that you're getting from Kubernetes, the Azures, the AWSs, the Googles, those type of things. Because right now you saw I had all that metadata that was set by this was running on this, and right, because right now it's that needle in the haystack. I got to bring it from the Kube API, I got to bring it from the cloud APIs and all that to be able to say this is this signal that's running in this certain place. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that enhancement. We do that in not only Falco, but we enhance it even more in the cloud the commercial product.
Oh, cool. Okay, so I could take as one source or one sink of one source of signals for all of my Kubernetes deployments, and then combine those in something like an Azure Monitor, Azure Sentinel, Security Center, whatever, and get a sort of a fully comprehensive view of everything that's going on, all the way down to like my Azure resources, including the Azure network security groups, the Azure NICs on the VMs, all that sort of stuff, and then can sort of blend that in with what we're getting from Falco in terms of what's actually happening on the machines. It seems like this is a sort of a level of visibility into these containers that we really just kind of haven't had before.
Without a doubt. And this is the thing, we talk about security. If you think about Kubernetes in any cloud native place, it's the underlying nodes. It's the Kubernetes control plane. It's the applications that are running it. It's the processes that are running there. You need all of that, right? But exactly what you said. I mean, this is just signal for you to data points that you can feed there, and Falco will literally is like a fire hose. It's going to get all of that. Yeah. It's going to send it all out there. In the commercial product, there's more kind of dissemination. You can do contextual based things and all that, but that does not mean that Falco is inferior. Falco has all this capability. You can DIY this stuff. If Microsoft users want, Azure users want to take this and combine this with, a Splunk or something like this, they can go ahead and do that. They have the raw materials to do that. But if they want to just like turnkey and not have to support a security platform, they can do that with Sysdig.
Very nice.
So one of the things you mentioned, there were a bunch of different built-in outputs, right? And then there's, I can't remember what it's called now, the sidekick.
Yeah.
So the sidekick has essentially a bunch of are those like community delivered or community built integrations for whatever, right? Correct.
And so
which one do you have? Let's get your screen back up here. So
yeah. So again, if we talked about that, there's this kernel mod probe that's for what I showed you from the demonstration. It basically, there's that web server that's fitting. These are the libs that we donated to the CNCF for contributed to CNCF. Then you're filtering through the expressions. Remember, I created that rule. And then it's sending these suspicious events through alerting to these standard calls, but also to Falco Sidekick in that UI, and this is where, John, you're going to steal my thunder, and you basically show how you were able to integrate with Event Grid here, right? So I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Yeah. So the Sidekick is that's where people have created their own, and there's a whole library of them out, or whole repo of them out on GitHub, right?
Yep. And what I love about it, you saw we started with 4 outputs, right? With standard out, syslog, and file and stuff like this. This is a contributor. His name is Thomas Labarouchis, and he's in France. He created 23 of those with the community. 23.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the community, because everyone's like, wow, I'd love to integrate this with Splunk, or I'd like to take some of this event data and send this out to Datadog or Prometheus or OpenFaz or those type of things, right? It's there. It's all there.
So there's one in particular that we were looking at, which was Event Hubs, Azure Event Hubs, right? And there's an existing integration today. It's a little older though, right? It needs to a little bit of love, get updated a little bit more, right?
I would love to see Microsoft do some contribution to Falco. That'd be awesome. What do we think?
Yeah, that seems like it'd be a good thing. So do you have a link to the repo so I can get it up here?
Yeah, hold on. No problem. Go side.
Hey, have you seen? I uploaded our new emotes, by the way. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're really cool. Oh man, I need to subscribe to get my own. What?
Yeah, you're not subscribed.
Subscribe to our channel, so I need to. That's ridiculous. What did I do? Right, I didn't say that properly.
Did you want the actual full repo or the one that we were the issue?
I think I found the repo, but yeah, a link to the issue would be helpful too. So
I got you.
All right, let me get my screen up here. So I just put the link over here in the chat. So this is the Sidekick repo in Falco security work, and there are a ton of these: Slack, Rocket Chat, Teams, Datadog, Elasticsearch, all sorts of different stuff here. Lambda, a simple queue service in AWS. I mean, there's only one Azure one, which is Event Hubs. But that's okay. That's okay.
We'll extend it so anytime we want.
So we've got Azure Event Hubs, which is super cool. And because we got webhooks, we can essentially call a function or whatever, right? Like we can always call a logic app or call a function. But you would set yours up for Event Hubs, right? To push data over to an Event Hub.
Yep.
And what's cool about Event Hubs, in fact, last week when Christos asked me what I was excited about from Build, I was like, "Oh yeah, we got a Event Hubs Premium." And he was like, "Really? That's the thing you're excited about?" He was like, "Give me a hard time about it." But I do like it because Event Hubs is like a read forward journal, right? And for data durability at scale, it can't be beat, right? I mean, you stuff a ton of data in there, it partitions it out for you, and then your consumers go and read from it, and you don't really have to manage. You don't manage hardly any of it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's super cool. It's one of my favorite things, especially for like IoT stuff or for logging data or for whatever. We use this when we did some work with a customer of ours. They're a race sanctioning body. I don't think I'm allowed to say their name, but they're a race sanctioning body, and we would capture data off of the cars and stuff it into an Event Hub and then process it in Azure, which was a lot of fun. So we could see things like real-time speed and RPM and all that sort of stuff. So Event Hubs are just massive scale. Like I think you can squeeze in at the broadest scale like 1 million messages a second. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I'm guessing that unless things have gone really, really poorly, Falco's not going to be generating thousands of alerts per second, right?
It's so again, and you were able to dither through this. You can use our common ones. We have an event generator showing all of those, but you can also create those customers or the ones you want. And those are not, again, those are triggered by those events, right? So, there might be a degree of false positive, and so that might you want to tweak those things and that type of thing, but you're not generating events until a rule is violated. So it is gathering all that data into buffer, and it's only alerting when, the expression pops out, right? So
right, when the expression matches. So it is local rule execution, and then the alerts get pushed wherever you want them to go, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I was thinking about what we had talked about before the show, and I was thinking about Falco as a whole, and thought, it'd be really cool to see how we could take this Event Hub integration and turn it into something else. So this morning, I decided to spend a little time and go look at how we could do this. So you had yours set up to an Event Hub. I didn't have access to yours, so I just sort of created my own. So we've got an Event Hub. It's got an Event Hub in it called Falco Alerts. And the Event Hubs are like single throughput units, like $20 a month. So it's pretty cheap. And for $20, you can stuff as much as you want to in that in that pipe. So we've got our Event Hub here, and this is what Falco can output to, right? With that Event Hubs integration, it's just a matter of getting the namespace key or the namespace, one of the send or a send key, really, not like you wouldn't need a listen key here, just a send key, and then start sending data into the pipe, right? That's what you had to configure on yours, right, Dan?
Yep. And so those are the options again that I plugged in through, Helm, or you can hard through it in a values file. It's, it's pretty much there. Yep.
Okay, cool. So with Event Hub, because we got this read forward journal, we can kind of start reading at any point in the journal, which is super cool. A little bit different from a traditional queue where you pop a message off the queue or you peek a message, you process it, and then you delete it. With an Event Hub, essentially it's a journal and you just roll through it and you can restart. You can read from, you could say, I want to go back to 7 hours ago and read forward from there. I think you can store like up to 7 days in here, but you can get some replay, which is cool. There's also this concept of a consumer group, and a consumer group, if you have multiple consumers, so maybe we have one consumer that's going to push this into log analytics. We have another consumer that's going to push it into, say, Splunk on-prem or something, right? So Event Hub's super flexible in the sense that you can really kind of put data in from anywhere and put it out wherever you want it to, and you can make copies and do all that, and your consumers don't really have to change too much. So I was thinking, I thought, what would be nice is the fastest and easiest way to get this data into log analytics, short of running a log analytics like agent on your nodes, would be to use a logic app. So we have a logic app here, right? And there are two connectors that we need, and luckily we have one for both. So in our logic app, we have two things that we have to have. One of the logic apps, or one of the connectors, is the Event Hub connector, and it's pretty straightforward. It's the name of your Event Hub, which just is connected through a shared access key, through a policy key for Event Hub. The consumer group, which we only have one, so that's okay. I've got it set to maximum event count 1, and the reason for this is that as the processors start to read, they won't output until they hit this threshold. So while we're testing, having just one in there makes it a little bit easier to test. Like if you had a ton of volume through here, you probably would want this to be higher than 1. So you collect, say 20, you collect 20 events before you output them, right? That sort of thing. And then we're checking once a minute. So once we've done that, there's a connector for the send data component of log analytics. I mean, it could not be easier. And we take the body and we stuff the body in and put it in our custom log. And that's it. Like, this is a 2-step logic app. One connects to the Event Hub and handles all the plumbing there and all of the checkpointing and all the work you have to do to get data out of Event Hub, which is super cool. And then the send data action that came out of the log analytics custom processor. This is all we have to do, and what we're going to do is send in the body from the Falco alert.
And you know what's crazier? You didn't have to write a single line of code. All that is just JSON configuration. So that integration is zero code, zero liability.
Yeah. So this is using the log analytics. If you're not familiar with log analytics, it's sort of there's a concept of a log analytics workspace, but it's sort of under the umbrella of this thing called Azure Monitor. It's to be honest, the naming between log analytics and monitor and all that is confusing. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why it is the way it is, but we have so many properly named products in Azure that we had to screw up the naming on at least one, right? Or else people would think that it wasn't a Microsoft product. So I don't actually know what today's name for log analytics and Azure Monitor. I don't know what their names are today, but that's what we're going to call them. So anyway, there's a log analytics data collector. So log analytics is, if you've used App Insights, log analytics is kind of like App Insights for infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. So the one thing I will say is, and I'm just going to add this point, if you all want to do direct log analytics, that's fine, but the enhancement that's being happen at the sidekick level, that's the thing that the true events. So again, continue, but I just think that just the direct logs is really cool the way you built this, so it's awesome.
Well, I think that's what's nice is we can take all of the work that Falco's doing in terms of enriching the data and executing the rules, that sort of thing. And then we can publish it up into log analytics. So we not only do we get, we can do things like alerting and queries and that sort of thing, but we get it over time. We can store it over time. So we can start, especially as we're hunting, using something like Azure Sentinel. If we're hunting through to figure out how somebody got in, or how data got leaked, or even in a non-security context, how why a service went down or whatever, we've got this sort of breadth of log data in one place that we can go look for, and we can combine all the work that Falco is doing with all the work that Azure's doing with the underlying infrastructure in order to try to figure out exactly what happened. So our log analytics workspace is really just a place to dump logs. And you dump logs either primarily, most folks are dumping logs through agents. So it's an agent, you go download the agent and you install it on Windows or Linux machines, right? You can also do it with things like FluentD, like our FluentBit. I'm using FluentBit on some Raspberry Pis because it's small and they've got an ARM build. So these agents essentially capture whatever kind of logs you want, Windows logs, event logs, IIS logs, Nginx logs, whatever, Windows and Linux. They capture all these and they push them into log analytics. I mean, it is a dumping ground, for lack of a better term, right? And then you tell it what you want to capture, perf counters, syslog, whatever. But for us, we're doing custom logs. And we're doing custom logs because we're going to use the HTTP connector. And the reason that we have to use the HTTP connector is because we don't have an integration like specifically to Falco, or we don't have an integration specifically for like, hey, go in, pick up data from this specific place. So we're just going to do a custom.
And that's where I think the sidekick comes into play at some point. But go ahead.
Well, I think that's the thing is there are a couple ways we could do this. So what we're doing right now is we're taking HTTP, and you are pushing your data from the sidekick up to Event Hub, right? Mm-hmm. Our logic app is reading the data from the Event Hub and pushing it over HTTP to.
Did he freeze?
Seems like it. Seems like
You're good.
No, we lost you.
Oh, well, I can still see myself, but I couldn't hear you. So we're taking. You push the Falco alerts to Event Hub. Mm-hmm. Event Hub pushes the Logic App reads those events out of Event Hub and sends them over HTTP to Azure Monitor, right?
Yep.
Log Analytics Workspace. As an alternative, because I noticed that we could do things like syslog and whatever, we could also run the Log Analytics agent in a container somewhere to go read syslog. So we could run that agent to read syslog, and then that would push the data in directly to Log Analytics without us having to do any sort of extra. Like we could just take whatever Falco is outputting into syslog or wherever, even just to a file, and we could read that. Of course, the thing is now we have an agent, and that agent has to be installed and connected, and we got to figure out secrets and all that sort of stuff for it. I kind of like this method better because it's more of a fire and forget on the app side. All the app's got to do, or all Falco's got to do, is say, "Oh, I found something," and send it out.
Yep, all based on that rule sets and all of that. So you can, this is great, awesome. Yep.
So this way we can handle it all over here. So the Log Analytics is going to go take this data and push it in. And so by pushing it in, we end up with this thing called a custom log, and the custom log is Falco alerts _CL. Easy enough. CL, of course, stands for custom logs. Because we don't want any clashes. So let's just go look at the logs that we got. All right. Yep. So if we look at the logs, so we got log management, we don't need this. So we look at our custom logs, and we've got Falco alerts _CL. So let's just run this. I'm just going to run a query and see what data is in here. So we've got some data, so that's cool. Let's get some of the stuff out of the way so we can see a little bit more. And here we have the data that happens. We have stuff like the content data. So this was the data that came from Falco, which is that, below a file was open for writing with root, right? So it was a write below a binary directory, which, we don't want to, isn't something we want to have happen. So now we've got this alert here, and we've got these consistent fields. We've got all this sort of consistency in terms of data. So we can start to run queries on this. And since we also know the node that it came from, we know and we have the extra data from Log Analytics in here too, we can start to build some really cool like cross source queries,
or maybe machine learning stuff.
Yeah, to really pinpoint how somebody got in, what somebody did when they got there. What was the foothold that got somebody in and gave them a bunch of other movement throughout the network. Yep. So, we didn't write any code for this. So Falco was configured with YAML, which writing YAML might be worse than writing code. I don't know. Falco was configured with YAML. to push to an Event Hub. We've got a logic app that's reading from Event Hub and pushing this over to HTTP API. And we can come in here and write all sorts of wild Kusto queries to start pulling data and pushing it into weird and new shapes.
You can reprioritize prod from dev. You can, really, like create those out there. And I'm going to ask this. Can I ask this as a homework? You all should write a blog for falco.org for this, because this is fantastic. Because again, Christos, you said earlier we only have one integration there that for Falco Sidekick. This is a great contribution right here. This is wonderful. I know users are asking for this.
I'm glad you got excited, man.
Great.
So the other thing that you mentioned was that the Event Hub integration today is a little bit older, and it doesn't support Azure Managed Identity yet. Is that correct? Yeah,
and again, that was a contributor from an end user, right? That probably doesn't have the basis that you all have, and so and this is the beauty of it, and this is what we've seen with GCP integrations or ones with Amazon. Those folks actually came in and from the contribution perspective and tweaked what the community put together. And so that's the beauty again of open source, right? Let's do let's do best practices, right?
Yes. So of course we also get all of the alerting. I think that's the other big thing, right? Is because we're in Azure Monitor, essentially we get alerting. And so we can do things like send a notification to administrators or shut down machines or make other webhook calls to go and do other things. We can do that from here. And so we're managing our sort of, notification orchestration happens cloud side, and Falco just has to worry about sending this data. It's just another source, right? And I think that's what makes it so cool. We got a question from Fuel. How costly is the log dumping, and how fast is the retrieval, and how do you deal with sensitive logs? So this is priced per gig of logs. I want to say it's fairly cheap. Log analytics per gig cost. You can also do it per node, which I think per node is $15 a month. Log analytics pricing itself is 10 cents a gig, something like that, or you can commit. So these are commitments. We don't care about commitment tiers. Pay as you go. Here you go. You get 5 gigs free, and it's $2.76 per gig of log data that you push in. Now, the logs that you are sending, or the data that you're getting out of Falco, presumably since it's already been sort of pre-analyzed, right, to generate an alert. Since we're not doing that alerting or that rule evaluation cloud side, it's happening Falco side. If you're generating a gig of logs or a gig of alerts from Falco, it either means you're monitoring a whole lot of things, or your security operations team is having an extremely bad day, right?
Or you have, and again, I will tell you this, there's a lot of false positive tuning that you would need to do. And if, again, Falco is a spigot, it's going to throw everything out there that's been violated. And so that's another, if you're looking at the commercial tool, there's aspects of it that do more of that dissemination, that you can basically say, okay, I want this rule to only apply to a certain, namespace. Like, again, the Wonder Twins namespace, if that's the only one that I care about, you know what I mean? So and that's the thing, right? And so any tool out there, regardless of what is alerting tool, like observability, all of that, there always is going to be a degree of false positive tuning that you need to tweak.
Yeah. Well, and like Bolt is saying in the chat too, is you may want to ship this into cold storage or something after a period of time. I mean, there's data retention. We store it for 30 days for free in the sense of you don't pay for storage past 30 days. If you need to store it longer than 30 days, you got to move it somewhere else. You got to move it to blob storage, export to blob. There's an export thing that'll do it for you. You got to move it to blob, move it to something like cold or archive storage, or maybe 30 days is enough depending on what your app is doing. Like maybe this level of granularity, 30 days is plenty, and you take some aggregates and store the aggregates as opposed to storing all of the raw logs, right? I mean, all sorts of different ways you can skin that cat, I suppose. So I think there are definitely lots of different ways to do it. Store data for long term. Fuel also says that Spark clusters are generating 50 million log events per 5 minutes.
Wow.
I guess that's why the Spark clusters are all so big. So that's a lot of logging fuel. And that actually gives me another question, Dan.
Yeah.
So are there like workload specialized rule sets? Like you showed us some of the rule sets from earlier. Are those sort of, those are kind of like, I guess those are workload specific, right?
Yeah. So again, this is community contribution, right? So like for instance, we've mapped some to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, right? All based on that, but also like some people have donated, things that are specific to file inspection, that type of thing, or to Nginx, or even to cloud providers. Like there's a Google set of rules and there's an Amazon set of rules. Or I think some folks have also looked into a degree of Azure level rules, and so like those things are there. And one thing I want to going back to the log storage thing, you're gonna like this is more like for the dissemination of this data. But if you want to take this and dump it into anything, like you said, logs and all of that, there's the cost, and you have to build that integration. That's what I'm saying. It's a DIY. Cool. But also, again, from a commercial perspective, we have a SaaS backend that's taking all that data that you can then feed and address to a consumer topic that's only specific to a certain set of data points. So that's something, again, that like if you're looking at doing DIY versus the commercial aspect, you have both of those there. So these are great options. Cool.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, yeah. So I think it's probably something we're going to look at in terms of how we can help improve the Event Hub connector to support things like managed identity. I think that'd be a big help, because Event Hubs and AAD support it hasn't been around that long. So I think that'd be a really cool thing that we could certainly help contribute to. So we're going to have to take a look.
We'd love to have you do that. And again, we're in the Azure marketplace right now from a Sysdig perspective, but anybody can get started right now. If you all go to falco.org/docs, just the same way as I think, like I said, JP, I sent him this data like last week. He was up and running pretty quickly, right? So it's not, if you
I didn't look at it this morning.
there you go, right? So, I mean, you were up and running and ready to go. We pride ourselves on that, just trying to get it. It's so simple for somebody to adopt and also like adopt and adapt to whatever their local requirements are.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I was really pleased at how easy it was to get it up and going. Like it was really quite simple. So I'm pretty pleased with it. And I think for me, I'm really interested in what kind of rule sets certain types of apps need, and like if there are any more of those that we can contribute to, because I think there may be certain traces, certain logs, certain things that happen with like certain styles of HTTP requests and things like that. I think have some like people trying to steal authorization codes, for example, right? Like in the identity pipelines of how you're signing in and doing things like that. Like people
again, you asked earlier. I love this. The question was, why do I need runtime security? Well, this is a category that I think we were very early on, and it's for exactly that thing. Because you have this thing running and you're thinking, I'm not vulnerable. It's all right. I've done vulnerability management and I'm blocking at an ingress level. Well, people getting in. People are, doing crypto mining functions. We have rules for that out of the box. There's, situations, like I said, those are all our signals and all that. But like, if you look at it, we have a default set of rules that you can take, but also you have that customizable perspective as well. And one of the things I shared with you all, maybe we could share it as well, is we have a VS Code integration as well. That's another one where we'd love, so you can like YAML lint it as well. But that's another thing where it was community contributed. And if we're not following a best practice, love to see Microsoft help from that perspective.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think too, like lots of deployment scripts today abuse the fact that the Azure CLI writes a file called access tokens.json, right? They go to that file and they use the access tokens to make graph calls or REST calls or whatever. And I mean, even that alone, like just seeing that something's reading access tokens, like because like you've got a sensitive file on the thing and you can't really do much about it. Like being able to see and know that things are doing that really lets you know, like that's a great signature that something's doing something it shouldn't be. Either your ops team is doing something they shouldn't be, or someone who, some sort of malicious actor is doing something they're not supposed to. So I think that, I don't know.
I'm throwing another link at you, but there's a file integrity monitoring thing that's on the Secure Hub. That's exactly what you said. Somebody created a new file they shouldn't. You could take that rule and make it Wonder Twin the crap out of it, and literally you can be like, look, there you go.
I mean, it's like, how many rules can we write that are even just identity related rules? I mean, this is awesome. I love it.
Yeah. And the beauty of this, it works in not only the Azure Kubernetes, but you can run this on logical hosts that are running Linux, for instance. And by the way, as soon as Windows eBPF gets more of that capability, guess what? You should be able to tap into eBPF functions and run Falco on those hosts as well.
What is eBPF for the uninitiated?
I said it earlier. It's enhanced Berkeley packet filtering capability. Think of it like almost a helper app to getting into the kernel. And this is recent. That somebody from Microsoft actually, it created a Windows-eBPF capability.
Nice.
That's an interesting. See, now you got me wondering too. Like, I'm guessing. I mean, ultimately, you need root on the node, right? In order to run it.
Currently, currently there's capabilities there for because it's tapping into the kernel and capabilities of that. Yes, that's required. But for that level of dissemination, I would pay that cost to do it. And also, we kind of sip our own champagne, because we have rules that say if this is integrity, is there an integrity issue? Go ahead and kill it.
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering, like, how could I run? I'm just thinking, like, almost like, how could I run in higher order services, Azure container instances, for example, or even stuff like web apps for containers. Like, is there some way in a multi-tenant PaaS environment that I could run something like this? Because I think, I don't know. I just think it's super valuable in terms of what it can offer. I think, I don't know, like,
we're seeing cloud providers integrate Falco in their kind of, distributions of like managed things, right? So, and that's the beauty of it as well. It's a CNCF project. It's also again, created by Sysdig, and it's, having this capability for somebody to have like this level of runtime detection. There's no other tool out there that does it like us.
Yeah. So what we got to do is we got to figure out a way to take your rule engine and port it into an assembly that I can include in my app that can run all the hooks through my app and tell me when my app is doing things that perhaps it shouldn't be.
It's called Kubernetes.
Well, Dan, hey, thanks for hanging out with us. I mean, it's been a ton of fun. Dan has a podcast. It's called a Popcast.
Yes.
So, we got the link up there. And we were on Dan's show like 400 years ago, and then last week it came out. And so if you'd like to listen to it, we talked identity with Dan, which was a lot of fun.
We had a great time. It was one of, like, honestly, the highlights of this year thus far. I mean, in terms of, like, you all got like 4,500 views in a matter of like a week. So it was beautiful. It was good to see that. Yeah. But in general, the podcast is pretty much the people behind the code. It's not as technical as we are here. It's more of just, finding out the personalities. And we had a great time just talking about, I mean, you all made me super interested in identity. I never thought I would ever be. And I was like, you know what? I like these dudes a lot. I'm like, I can't wait to, be on their show someday. So I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for having me on the show. This has been fantastic. I love being on.
So your podcast comes out once, is it like once a week and once every other week, something like that?
It's every Wednesday. And to add to my schedule as well, we just started on CNCF Twitch. It's cloud native TV. So every day there's different programming. We call it like techtainment, like tech entertainment. It's nice. And so this is going to be a live stream where we're talking not just about the people, but the projects that are in the CNCF, how people can get up to speed on how they can contribute to projects, because that's a question everybody sees. It's like, okay, I really like Prometheus, or I really like, some of the identity stuff that's going out there. I really want to get involved with it. How do I do that? And so we have a show every day that we're doing that. So that's at cloudnative.tv, everybody.
Cloudnative.tv, and that's Cloud Native FDN on Twitch, right?
Yes. Yep.
That seems like the perfect. They're live right now. That seems like the perfect place for us to go raid.
Nice.
There you go.
I don't know about you. I don't know
Perfect
what they're doing
segue.
today. I don't know what
Perfect
they're doing
segue.
today.
We were doing show submissions. Would love to have the Wonder Twins do a open source like identity thing. That would be awesome. So you heard it here first, y'all.
Be careful what you ask for.
Okay.
We don't say no.
So well, this has been awesome, Dan. Thank you
Yes.
so much. It's Dan Pop.
Dan Papandrea, right?
Yeah.
Pop?
Stand pop.
Which we
Papandrea.
said it's not Greek, even though it sounds so Greek. My wife was like, no, Italians do also have Papandrea in their name.
Yeah, it's the bottom of the boot. My parents are from Calabria. That's why. So yeah.
I'm telling you, deep down we're cousins. You just don't know it.
I hope so.
We're
I
gonna-
really like it. That's good.
So we're gonna go raid Cloud Data Foundation, but we'll be back. Our friends, our infrastructure and IT
Tomorrow.
pro friends, will be back tomorrow.
Yes.
We will be back on Friday, I believe,
Yes.
continuing our secrets rotation. We actually had an interesting request come in yesterday about integrating secrets rotation into the Thrasman.
Plasman. Yeah. I don't know, man. A lot of exciting stuff. Thanks everyone for joining in today, and thanks to Dan for spending his morning with us.
Thanks, fellas.
Yeah.
See you all later. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See ya. We're gonna raid on over. Almost ready to go over to Cloud Data Foundation. Almost ready. I don't know why we have the timer for raiding. I don't understand that.
I know.
So I don't know. It's kind of weird, but all right.